Congressman Kinzinger, welcome to the Daily Social Distancing Show.
Thanks. Good to be with you.
So, first questions first. Where do people go to find a new family? Because you were famously thrust into the news when your family wrote you a letter, not only saying that you had betrayed Donald Trump and you had betrayed them, but you had joined the devil's army. Quite a letter to get from some of your family members.
Yeah, it was a little surprising, but so I look at it and say, look, I have great family, some closer that, may disagree with me that aren't going to send me a devil's army conscription form. But yeah, it was pretty crazy. But I'm glad it got out there. I didn't release it. She sent it so far and wide, actually, that the reporter was able to find it. But, it kind of shows people what's going on in families today.
But your own family thinks that you have betrayed Donald Trump and you are betraying the Republican Party by saying that Donald Trump didn't in fact win the election and there was no giant steal, aka the big lie. If a Republican cannot convince his Republican family of these things, what hope is there for America?
Well, I do think there's hope. And if you think about it, look at how long it took to really go from when Donald Trump announced he came down the escalator, he had like 10% support. Everybody thought he was a joke. And then over time, when he was talking, he eventually kind of led to this movement that we have. So it's going to take some time to pull people out of that. But I think up to this point, we've had no competing narrative. If you don't hear anybody say the election wasn't stolen and 74 million people that voted for Trump weren't disenfranchised, they just were outnumbered. Until somebody says that aggressively, you're going to believe it. And that's what's important right now is just to tell people the truth. There's this culture war brewing here where it's all about owning the other side. And I still want to go out and fight for principles. And that's where I think the pivot needs to happen that's actually going to save not just the Republican Party, but the country, is if we actually start talking about policy principle again, how to bring people up from poverty, what defending the country means. Those are the kinds of things that I think Americans are actually desperate for. They're just not the loudest ones tweeting.
When we look at that now, I mean, America is going through one of its toughest periods. I mean, the world is. We've never seen anything like it. Joe Biden is trying to pass his $1.9 trillion relief bill for COVID. There's been a lot of back and forth on this. You are a congressperson. I would love to know from your perspective why you're opposed to Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion plan.
Yeah, look, there was no effort to reach out. I'd never had a conversation with anybody in the White House about it. No effort to say, what does it take to bring on board? I'm desperate to have a compromise on this, and I'm hoping that when it comes back from the Senate, there'll be some changes, actually making sure that we're giving the amount of money that these states need and not just writing a blank check, and that some of the money towards education, for instance, is actually done this year. A lot of it's next year. And there actually needs to be more money for medicine and research. So look, I'm one of the ones that's eager to say, let's do this. Let's work on things together. And we both just have to be willing to do it. And so I'm not going to blame, the president for not reaching out to Republicans. They make a decision. But I do think if somehow it gets blocked up in the Senate, we have an opportunity to get this done.
The bill has quite a few proposals. It touches on everything from, raising the minimum wage, which is now probably out of the conversation, to getting funding to people who work in restaurants and bars and making sure that people get vaccinated and providing PPP, etc. What would you change in that bill? What do you think it's missing if they had come and spoken to you?
Yeah, I don't know if it's missing anything. I do think we can come to a compromise on the minimum wage, for instance. I'm for increasing the minimum wage. I just think doing it at this moment, right, to $15, over a short period when businesses are struggling is the wrong time. So I would like to see an increase. But on things like opening schools, there's over $300 billion that goes to that, but most of it doesn't go in until next year. And you look at things like vaccine researches for the future. You look at things like helping hospitals now. And then the fact, Illinois, for instance, which has had this huge systemic problem of fiscal mismanagement, just gets a ton of money from the federal government. Mm-hmm. I want that to be more based on need instead of just based on number.
When you look at that, though, America has a history of under preparing for these situations. If you go back, every time there's like a stimulus bill, every time it falls short of the mark. And in hindsight, economists go, we just didn't spend enough money. We didn't give the people enough money. I mean, 70% of Americans are saying, we want this bill. We want these checks. We need this help. Don't you think it's better to err on the side of caution and just go like, well, let's maybe overspend, but let's get the economy going and let's get people out of their houses and let's get people eating again?
Yeah, look, I think it's a good point to make. And I think, for the last year, we've been doing that. There have been a lot of pretty sizable amounts of money we've been spending on things like the payroll protection program, et cetera. But look, if you want to reach out to me for that input, I'm happy to chat with the administration about it. But they didn't. And the numbers I saw were like, hey, yeah, we're going to spend a lot of money, but we still have to understand what we're doing with it because this money has to be paid back at some point. So, again, my hope is with the Senate, if it hits a bottleneck there, we can have an opportunity for bipartisan. And I'm still eager on bipartisan things like infrastructure going forward because this country deserves people that can have a conversation like you and I are on this issue without just hating each other.
My personal opinion has been that, I think the two-party system will in some way, shape, or form end up destroying America. That's my personal view because I think it doesn't give people enough room to be more than just one of two sides. I don't think there's two sides to anything. Right now, though, the Republican Party's in an interesting place. Are you a conservative and do you have these beliefs? Or do you raise a flag that says Donald Trump? And it feels like more Republicans are saying, forget Republican, we are Trump. Where do you then go from there?
Yeah, so that's what the battle is right now. And I think that's going to be, we'll have a good idea over summer. I think Donald Trump is going to continue to be lessened as every day goes on because Americans, we don't always solve challenges, but we move on from them and we move on to the next president. So that's why I started countryfirst.com with a 1ST is just like, especially for Republicans, independents, and even Democrats that say we need a healthy Republican Party to have a place to go to fight for the narrative of the Republican Party. Because tell you what, the two-party system won't destroy the country if you have a healthy opportunity for debate and an open tent. We should have people that disagree in the Republican Party as the Democrats do in their party.
Well, you are in for the ride of your life. It is going to be extremely vicious. It is going to be extreme, as you've seen from within your own family. And so we'll be watching. And good luck to you versus Donald Trump.
Thank you. Well, you know what? Some things you got to put it all on the line for, and I'm willing to.
I hear you there. Thank you so much for taking the time, Congressman.
You bet.